So we want to take a look at solving some absolute value equations. So when we're solving absolute value equations, the first thing that's very important is to isolate the portion of this equation um, with the absolute value on one side. So right now I can see we have the absolute value of x minus 5 in this first example. I don't want anything else on that left-hand side before I start solving. So what I have to do is right out here we have a negative 5 times the absolute value of x minus 5. So I want to divide both sides by that negative 5. All right, so we end up with the absolute value of x minus 5 equals 4. Okay, this is a very important step to have when solving because it's going to tell you how many solutions your absolute value is going to have. So if you remember from some previous work with absolute values, when we have the absolute value equal to a positive number, that means we're going to see two solutions to this equation. So if it was 0, we would see one solution, and if it was negative, we would see no solutions because you cannot take the absolute value and obtain a negative number. So this is a very important step, and you need to write it. Okay, it needs to be in your work. So when we're done with that, we can go ahead and start solving this absolute value. So when we're thinking about the absolute value, so say I had the absolute value of x equals 4. I really have two options for x, right? X could equal 4 or x could equal the opposite, negative 4. Because if I take the absolute value of negative 4, that'd be positive 4. So we're going to take those two cases. So we kind of have case 1 where we have the absolute, or excuse me, x minus the inside, right? So now we're taking the inside. X minus 5 could equal 4. Okay, so that's sort of like that first case there. Case 2 is where it could equal the opposite. So x minus 5 could equal negative 4. And we just want to solve these two cases. So we'll add 5 to both sides. We'll get x equals 9. And over here, we'll do the same thing, except this time we'll get x equals 1. So those are going to be the two solutions. And we're going to write our solutions in set notation. And traditionally, you write them in numerical order. So if you wanted to check, you can check your work by just substituting back in. So if we have negative 5 times the absolute value of 1 minus 5, we're hoping that that equals negative 20. So that would be negative 5 times the absolute value of negative 4, which would be negative 5 times 4, which does in fact equal negative 20. So good. We need to check our other solution. Negative 5 times the absolute value of 9 minus 5. That's negative 5 times the absolute value of 4, which is just 4. So we have negative 5 times 4, which, yes, is negative 20. So they both worked, so we did our problem correctly. Okay, next up. So again, we need to isolate that absolute value. That's our first step. We always need to do this. We're going to divide both sides by 2 here. We're going to end up with the absolute value of 2x plus 10 equals 15. So once I get to this step, again, very important, so I'm starring it, I can look and I can say, how many solutions am I going to have? So it's a positive value there, so I'm going to have 2 solutions. So I have to take my 2 cases. All right, so we're going to have case 1 and we're going to have case 2. Case 1, 2x plus 10 could equal 15, or case 2, it could equal the opposite. 2x plus 10 could equal negative 15. Okay, so let's solve through. So subtracting 10 from both sides in case 1, 2x equals 5. Dividing by 2, we would get x equals 5 halves. Now this is a terminating decimal. So if you would like to write 2.5, that's fine. If it is a non-terminating decimal, so a repeating decimal or something like that, I would ask you to leave it in fraction form. No rounding here, exact values only. Okay, so then on the other side, we're going to have subtracting 10 again. So 2x equals negative 25. Dividing by 2, x equals negative 25 halves. I prefer things in fractions. I'm just going to leave it in fractions. So our solutions would be negative 25 halves and 5 halves. So fractions are fine, negative values are fine, Even a value of 0 is fine, all of those options, we're good to go. Okay, if you want to substitute them back in and check, you absolutely can. All right, last one. So we're going to keep solving. So again, here's my absolute value of 2x minus 3. I have to move that plus 7, right? We have to go ahead and move that to the other side. We're going to do that inverse operation, subtracting 7. Get the absolute value of 2x minus 3 equals negative 7. So this is why this step is so important, because if you went through and solved, you would be doing more work than you have to do here, right? But what I'm looking at right now is I have an absolute value of something equal to a negative number. Well, here's a problem, because an absolute value will always be positive, always be positive. So a positive number can never equal a negative number, right? So we have ourselves a conundrum here. Okay, so we're trying to say a positive quantity is going to equal something negative. Well, that can't happen, right? So in this one, we have no solutions. So the second we see that happening, our absolute values are isolated, right? We're in this step, and it equals a negative number. No solutions. Don't go further. Don't go ahead and solve anymore, because there won't be any solutions that you'll be able to find.